Rome International Film Festival.
We're back. Thank you to our fake crowd here. Let's turn them down. Thanks for joining us here on the Rome International Film Festival podcast on Rome Business Radio. We broadcast from the Hardy Realty Studios on Broad Street in downtown Rome, Georgia. We work in cooperation with the Rome News Tribune, and this podcast is presented by a local business, Manco Logistics. You can find them online at mancolog.com. That's MANCOLOG.com. I am the moderator of our podcast, Roger Manus with Rome Business Radio, and I'm going to turn it over to our host now, the executive director of RIF, the Rome International Film Festival, Seth Ingram. How you doing, Seth?
Doing great. Got my buddy Mark Van Leuven here, board president. Got a very special guest today. We're excited about the show.
Who's our guest today?
Our guest is a legend in these parts of the country and other parts of the country. He is a former executive director of the Rome International Film Festival. He is an accomplished musician and actor, the one and only Harry Musselwhite.
Well, hello, everybody. Oh.
That's our fake studio audience.
I love it. It's great to be here today, folks. Great to be here.
Hi, Harry. I'm Roger Manus with Rome Business Radio, and I'm kind of here to moderate the conversation that you guys have for RIF. Excited to be a part of this. So I'll just step back and welcome to the wonderful world of Bluetooth, and you're connected, and let's talk.
Yeah. So
thank you, Roger. Thank you.
Well, for those who aren't familiar with you, Harry, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to. I introduced your past, but tell us a little bit about what's going on in your present.
Well, I lived in Rome for 30 years, where my day job was I was a music professor at Berry College. I led the choirs and taught voice and did all sorts of things like that, and then of course became active in the film industry through a number of things, including I started out writing synopses for the Rome International Film Festival. So I had a humble beginning. I had a legal pad, a pen, and a stack of DVDs. and so for 30 years I was in Rome and loved Rome and raised a wonderful son there. And I retired from Berry College, and my wife is the Dean of Instruction at the University of New Mexico, Valencia, which is about 20 minutes south of Albuquerque. And so I've been out here around 9 years, and my plan was to be involved in the motion picture industry out here, which is very vibrant, very thriving. We have the incentives like Georgia does, and we have 4 major studios here, brick and mortar studios, including a gigantic one that's owned by Netflix. And so I have been really, really lucky in that I was able to move into the business out here. I don't want to say seamlessly, but close to seamlessly. And I act, I produce. I wasn't going to do music out here. I felt like I'd done music for 30 years back in Georgia, and a colleague said, "Well, think again." So I have a new company here called Dos Sueños Music Production, and we do music scores for motion pictures and television shows. So that's just another thing that I do. So and I've continued, oddly enough, music performance out here. I've done some opera and some concertizing, and so I'm just having a blast. It's a beautiful, they call it the land of enchantment. We call it the land of entrapment. So there you go.
Well, I've also seen you on the screen a few times in the last year or so. So I think I saw you slap MacGruber. Is that right?
Yes, I had my first action scene, which was really fun.
What, they didn't need a stuntman?
No stuntman, just me. And it was just 3 of us on set, which was really a remarkable thing. It was me and Will Forte, who was from Saturday Night Live, and he created the character of MacGruber. But the third person on set was just a real bucket list for me. It was the legendary Sam Elliott, and Sam was just as charming and wonderful as he could be. And I played Sam Elliott's butler, and we taped all day, and at one point we crossed set, and he was headed in one direction, I was headed in the other, and he stopped me, and he reached out, and he grabbed my arm, and with that great Sam Elliott voice, he said, "Harry, how you holding up?" I said, "Sam, I'm doing just great." And unlike some other stuff, they used everything. I don't think they cut. I mean, we did lots of takes, obviously, but I don't think they cut anything from the MacGruber thing, and a lot of people got to see it. The other biggest thing I've done is I was in an episode of Better Call Saul, and I was just really thrilled to be on set with every major character, and I played a lawyer who delivered one of the eulogies at if you remember, the older brother of Jimmy, who was played by Michael McKean. He died in a mysterious fire and everything. But anyway, they wrote me a beautiful monologue, and we taped it, and when it was over, Peter Gould, one of the showrunners of Better Call Saul, came through the set and grabbed me, and he said, "Harry," he said, "we just love you. This was just fantastic." And I was going, "Well, I'm the king of the world." Well, Seth, you're a director and an editor. You know what happened? I got cut, man. My part got cut to pieces. I'm barely in there. But as I say, the generous check cleared with no problem.
Well, that's the part that matters, I suppose. You're still in the credits.
Absolutely. Still in the credits, still on IMDb. And I'm still in there, but I mean, this beautiful monologue, which I really killed myself to memorize and internalize and do all the actor things. And, and they were just generous. I mean, we taped that monologue for over an hour. And so, but it was great. They were wonderful. All the people I was with everybody but Giancarlo Esposito. He was not on the set that day. And, I saw Michael McKean on the lot, and I wanted so bad to run up to him and grab him and thank him for Spinal Tap, but I didn't get a chance to do that. But it was great fun.
Well, as somebody not familiar with the industry as much as you guys are, obviously, that's interesting to me. As an actor, you go through the creative process, and Seth, maybe you can touch on this as well from a director or producer standpoint. Sometimes people get cut out, or something gets cut out. What are the decisions that go into making a cut to keep the story intact? Is it a timing thing? Is it a storytelling decision? What goes into that?
It can be all of the above. And it can be executives giving notes, and it can be usually it is trying to just compress it all to make it fit in the time slot, especially for television. You have some strict constraints there, but yeah, and it could be a creative choice. You could get a bad performance. Not saying that your performance was bad, Harry, but you could.
They acted like I was the king of the world, so maybe they're just good liars. I don't know.
Yeah, lots of stuff gets left on the cutting room floor. It's it could be a technical issue that you had on the set. You have some bad sound or something, and you don't want to bring the person back in for ADR, which is when you record their lip sync their voices back in the studio. All that costs money, extra money, if you don't get it on the set. So,
well, is it frustrating from the creative process to have been the actor and then get cut, or do you feel
Absolutely.
like
we hate it?
Yeah.
we want to be on the screen. The most famous one, at least one of the most famous ones I know of, is the beginning of The Big Chill. There's a body, and it's sort of like the autopsy, and it sort of sets up this weekend while those college friends are gathering in South Carolina. Well, the body, which you never see the face, and he had a major scene. That's Kevin Costner. He got completely cut out of that movie.
Yeah, they would never do that to Costner now.
No, not now. He was a young buck then.
Yeah, I was actually that's good movie trivia. I actually was familiar with that. Isn't that crazy how Bruce Willis was an extra in Paul Newman's film The Verdict. He was in the courtroom as just a person sitting in the courtroom.
Here's another one for you that's just speaking of Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott's first film is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and he's one of the card players at the Hole in the Wall, and he is uncredited. He was just a nothing nobody.
Was
and,
that pre?
Of course,
was that
Sam Elliott's
pre-mustache?
a household name.
Pre-mus-
Yes.
How was it being in the room with Sam Elliott's mustache?
It was. I'll tell you what. He was freaky looking. In MacGruber, he has shoulder length, straight white hair. He almost looks ghostly. He was just really, really freakish looking, and he plays a really slimy guy. He's a murderer and whatever. But it's all tongue in cheek with MacGruber. But yeah, the mustache was there.
Hey Harry, in MacGruber, you were actually acting with two actors that also acted in Tombstone together, Val Kilmer and Sam Elliott. How was it working with Val Kilmer, or did you share any time on set with him?
Well, I was. Val Kilmer was not on set the day that I was. He was not in my episode, so I did not see him. I know he has a beautiful ranch quite near me here, but I didn't get to work with him. Unfortunately, I would love to have worked with him.
Well, it's great just as somebody kind of outside the industry that moderates a podcast for you guys, that to hear, Sam Elliott's had such a long and distinguished career, and I think Big Lebowski, I think his little guest starring role on Parks and Rec, a sitcom, but it starts and ends with me with Roadhouse. So it's just we all associate different actors with different things. It's great to hear that they're good people. So.
Yeah, Mark's not going to trash anybody this week.
No, I'm not going to trash anybody. But you were talking about uncredited roles, and speaking of the Sam Elliott and Catherine Ross connection, Sam Elliott's married to Catherine Ross, and she was in The Graduate. And in The Graduate, y'all remember Norman Fell, who played Mr. Roper on Three's Company?
I do.
Sure.
There's a scene when he's trying to kick Dustin Hoffman out. He's just suspicious of his character, and there's a guy behind Norman Fell's character, the landlord, saying, "You want me to call the cops? I'll call the cops." It's Richard Dreyfuss, uncredited role. 1968, The Graduate.
So?
Yep.
I can picture that scene as clear as a bell. That's incredible. The things that happen. I shot an independent film here in New Mexico last fall called Behind the Yellow House, and one of the main features of this particular film, it's a period film, 1950s, whatever, and so they had brought in all of these vintage automobiles. And they were gorgeous. Oh, I was just salivating. It was wonderful. And we had been shooting all day, and there was a sort of a parade of these cars as they pull up into this home. And we were churning and burning. We were doing takes, and they were resetting, and life was good, and it wasn't too hot, and it was just great. And the lead, most important car, after about 5 or 7 takes, that car died deader than a cement block. It literally would not crank. I mean, they were freaking out. Of course, film sets have a lot of experts, but not many film sets have an auto mechanic attached to it. And we were out in the middle of the desert, sort of, and so the whole scene. I mean, just Seth knows, as being a director, you got to learn how to improvise, and so they had to just stop that scene and look at the footage that they had and move on. But that car died, and you could feel every member of the set, from the grips, the actors, or whatever, everybody's shoulders just sunk down about 3 inches, because it was such a key important part. And yet you had to, time is money in film. You had to move on.
Let's circle back around to Riff a little bit. What are some of the pleasant things you remember and the headaches you remember that Seth deals with every day that he won't talk about the headaches? Maybe he will.
Well, I was there for 8 years, and by the way, it was a team, because my wife, who didn't get any credit, nor did she want it as assistant executive director, whatever, she was as much a part of the glue that held the festival together for those 8 years as I was. And so I have to give her a big shout out because of what, and we, this is so funny that I should be with you guys this morning, because we were talking about Seth and his beautiful bride working as a team on behalf of Riff, and how there seems to be sort of a tradition of a husband and wife sort of creative team helping Riff to do the great job that it does. So I want to definitely say that. And I think the highlight really were the people, particularly the people that came from out of town, whether they were from L.A. or various places, but to meet in some cases some real legends. Mary Badham, who was Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird. I'll never forget picking her up at the Hawthorne Suites and not knowing if we were going to have a crowd, and I pulled down Broad Street, and we got to the corner of the block that the DeSoto sits on, and the crowd, the line was all the way down to the next block, and I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, she was as charming and told all the Gregory Peck stories. So what a privilege and an honor it was to be with her and similar people to her. I met one of the great friends that still remains a great friend to me, a legendary bluegrass guitarist named Dan Crary, who is now one of my dearest friends. And he was sponsoring a film called Primal Twang, and he talked about that film. It was a music documentary. So the people, just wonderful people that it was such a privilege to do that. And another great thing was that when I went to the Sundance Festival representing Riff, and to be a film festival executive director. My funny story there, I was on one of those shuttle buses going to one of the venues in Park City, Utah, and I was sitting with a stranger filmmaker, and so I said, well, what do you do? And she says, well, I have a film here, and she says, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm the executive director of the Rome International Film Festival. And like a sitcom, 8 hands suddenly extended with DVDs in their hands. They were so ready. It was just like a skit, right? I said, as soon as I said executive director, 8 DVDs were thrust into my lap. So that was pretty funny.
I have very similar experience. But I was at the Slamdance Film Festival, which takes place in Park City during the same time as Sundance, and they have a meet the directors portion of the film festival, and everyone's telling them who they are. And I said, I'm Seth Ingram. I'm the executive director of the Rome International Film Festival, and I get flocked by a lot of ambitious filmmakers. And then they quickly realized I didn't have an Italian accent. And so it's the other Rome, but we're older than they are. Our festival's older anyway.
About a year or two.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And it is, you get a lot of experiences, and it is interesting when you travel to places like that and represent the town and the film festival and all that we represent. It's you are an ambassador to Rome when you're in this position. So it does have its perks sometimes in that regard. But yeah, do you have any other funny stories, Harry, about Riff? Or let's bring it back to the beginning when Riff was when you first came on to Riff. Tell us how that transpired. How did you come into the film festival?
Well, I was I think I was just a board member. I was on the board of the Rome Area Council for the Arts, and the 2 guys came in, Barry Norman, who brought the festival to Rome, and Alan with the Rome Area Council for the Arts. I can't pull his last name. Alan Bell, the great Alan Bell. So there we were one afternoon, and they came in and they said, we have this idea that we were all about and remained a real champion of downtown Rome, the Broad Street and the restaurants and the culture and so forth. And they pitched this film festival to us. And I was already a film buff and had done anything with film. I was still 100% music, but I really stood up on my chair and said, this is the best idea I've heard in ages. And so it started out in 2 venues. Well, actually, it was a bunch of different venues. It was at the DeSoto, and then there was a Rome doctor whose name slips me, but he owned the movie theater that's in the shopping center where Aldi's is now. There used to be a movie theater.
The Village. There was the Village Shopping Center, the Village Theater.
There you go. And so he generously gave 1 or 2 of his venues there. So we had great seating. It was a real film festival, and the people came, and I was just like, thrilled. Hey, I did the synopses. I'm somebody. I'm in the film business now. And so each year I ended up doing more. I think the next year I did some synopses, and I think I did some Q&As. And the next year I did a little bit more. I think they asked me to be on the board at that point. And then as festivals everywhere, not just Rome, but here in New Mexico, whatever, it's tough. It's tough to lead a nonprofit, no matter what you're doing. And so, people left. Barry left Rome. Alan moved on to working for the state in various arts leadership roles. And suddenly they said, Harry, you're the guy. And I said, okay, I'll do this. I'll try this. And I had a vision, and I was excited at the privilege of leading the film festival. But you asked me what I hated, and I'll just be honest with you right on this podcast. What I hated more than anything else, and it's why I'm not in a nonprofit now, I just got so bloody tired of raising money, of begging for money. It wore me down and out. And so I left the film festival, and it's so funny. When I came out here, I was the first year I was out here. They found me out, and I was on the board of an organization called the New Mexico Film Foundation, which is an organization that's prime job is to help encourage and finance independent film in the state of New Mexico. It's a great organization. And so I was on the board the first year, and the second year, you know what's coming. I was executive director, and I finally went to the creator and I said, I love you. I said, I love this organization. I love what it does. I love what it stands for. I said, but I'm spending all my time raising money for the film foundation, and I need to raise money for my own artistic product, my own films. I want to produce my own stuff. And I said, I did this in Georgia. I said, I don't want to do it anymore out here. And he understood. And so that's what I hated. The constant begging.
I can sympathize with you there, Harry. I came into it, I had the more established board of directors at the time that had a lot of traditional funding sources. And so that the first few years I didn't do a lot of it, but then as board members rotate off, you have to step it up and find out how to do it yourself. And so it's been, right. I'm now entering my 8th year as director of this festival. Wow. Which is crazy. I thought I would be here for a couple of years, but I'm still here doing it. And we've seen it grow. And at the time you were here, Harry, I guess the film industry had kind of been here a little bit, but now it was maybe before the film industry just really landed in Georgia as solidified as they are now.
Yeah, we caught a wave of renewed film production, and we benefited from that. And then it kind of went down a little bit, and then we just 8 years of that you can just see that graph of film production in Georgia. By the way, you guys need to know that we New Mexicans, we hate Georgia. I'm being facetious, but there are numbers of Georgia actors who come out here, and as I told there was a big film event here a couple of weeks ago, and I said, yeah, these Georgia actors are taking food out of our New Mexico children's mouths. And not too many New Mexico actors do a lot of Atlanta work. And the reason is we're the majority of us are what are called day players, and day players basically means that you live where the films are being made, and they don't have to pay transportation and flights and hotel, right? And so they're not going to hire me as a day player in the Atlanta market unless some director like, Seth Ingram falls in love with my acting and lures me to Georgia to act in a film. Now, if you move up to what's called a co-star, then things are taken care of. But New Mexico really has its eye continually on what's happening in Georgia with the studios there, with the incentives, and we believe that a lot of people in Georgia keep their eye on New Mexico because we have the same studio system out here that you guys have. So it's an interesting dynamic, and the film festivals are part of that cog, as it were.
And I think it with the onset of all the streaming over the years, I think festivals have become a different sort of animal because there's such a proliferation of online content. And it used to be that you would come to the festival in a small town to see the films that maybe you wouldn't have a chance to see otherwise, or not all in one location. But now everything's at your fingertips. So it has changed the landscape of what film festivals look like over the years.
Our big festival just ended here, and it's an interesting hybrid. It's called the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience, and it is half film and half music, and so as a result, you get a hybrid. You get a lot of music documentaries and that sort of thing, and there are really nice venues here, and this one's pretty successful. Santa Fe has two competing film festivals. And by the way, Santa Fe is such a famous town, but honestly, it's a small town. To be the capital of New Mexico, I don't know what its population is, but it's really small. But because of its beauty and its hyper artistic, positive environment, it attracts a lot of really important creatives, including this fellow named George R.R. Martin. Now, whatever happened to him? Did he ever have any success? I don't know. Anyway, but he bought a theater, and he has a theater there that seats about 150 people, and it's basically New Mexico's super and superb indie cinema. So a lot of stuff happens under George R.R. Martin's. I joke that he has a faucet there in the Jean Cocteau Theater, and every Friday he turns it and money just pours out of it. But what can I say?
I have a question for both of you guys. Sorry, Mark, I'm going to leave you out.
Hey, I'm just listening to the two executive directors go back and forth.
It's awesome, isn't it?
You don't get that opportunity all that often.
Yeah. I'm a movie buff, TV buff. So when I hear New Mexico and you mention Albuquerque, of course, I think it's a great capital for methamphetamine because I watched Breaking Bad. You mentioned you were on Better Call Saul till they which was awesome, by the way. But I'm familiar. I've heard of the Sundance Film Festival. I've heard of Tribeca. How well known is RIFF in the industry? You said you were executive director. They start handing you DVDs. Seth jokes that sometimes we get confused with Rome, Italy, but through the industry, how well known are we out there?
I think over the years we've developed a great reputation, especially with the filmmakers. And as the longer you exist, the better your reputation gets. So you start out on those early foundations. You may be getting some more, maybe not as high quality of submissions as we get later. Now we have studios calling us, to try to play their films. So it's very competitive. I think, Harry, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I do. And I have to say that I'm pretty connected out here in the film industry. And I'd say the majority of the filmmakers out here in New Mexico are not aware of RIFF. They are not. But I would say that if we went to a film event in Atlanta and I said something like the Santa Fe International Film Festival, I don't think they would know much about it. And I don't think they would know anything about the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience. I think it becomes very regionalized. Now, that being said, my good friends, I am an evangelist for RIFF out here. Everybody who makes what I deem to be a quality indie film, you guys are the first guys I said, contact Seth Ingram. Tell Seth Harry Musselwhite recommends that he take a look at your film. I said, I can't guarantee you that it'll be accepted, but you'll be past the front door. And I do that. I've been doing that out here for 9 years, and proudly so, because I believe in RIF, and I believe that, well, two things. I believe that RIF is a quality organization, and B, I believe that we have some of the most talented filmmakers on the planet out here in New Mexico. And so to get them connected. And by the way, I do the same thing with a buddy of mine, the Knoxville Film Festival, which is a real quality film festival. I just helped a young woman get her documentary in the Knoxville Film Festival, and they won the audience award, which made me very happy. So yeah, I'm, you know, listen, there's a film festival in Montana. What's the big resort?
Is it Big Sky?
Might be Big Sky, but I think it's a city. It's a city.
No, well, I don't know, but you brought me back now to Kevin Costner in Yellowstone when you mentioned Montana.
Right. Well, the point is, film festivals, I think, have unless it's what the ones you mentioned, Tribeca and Toronto and Sundance. Those get the headlines in Variety magazine, and RIF and Santa Fe and AFME, they don't so much, you know. So it's and I'm not sure that's a game maker or a game breaker. It just is.
It's good, and it's a different. Those are a different vibe of film festival too. But they're what we call film market festivals, where distributors go to the festivals to try to buy the films. So that's when you're a film market. It's really is a game changer. And Venice is one, a big one. In Venice, Italy. South by Southwest is another one regionally, but we're trying.
Right.
But we are maturing as a film festival and entering our 19th year. So I think that we are trying to grow it from, you know, a very regional, or grow it to a regional festival, because we are more widely known than we have been. So I think we are getting higher quality submissions and people do know about us. And with the evangelism of Harry Musselwhite,
one of the metaphors that I use.
I'm still getting my checks from using that. Oops! I shouldn't have said that.
One of the metaphors I use is I like minor league baseball, and I see the film industry or the film festival circuit kind of like minor league baseball. And you're working your way up the ladder with some of the regionals and getting the notice of folks higher on up in the distributorships and so on. Yeah, I mean that's probably the best way to describe it to a layperson about how that operates, if you're familiar with the way it works in the farm system of baseball.
Well, just the star quality that has visited Rome over the years because of it, and as the industry grows here in the state of Georgia.
And the more film production we get too, the easier it is to, you know, it's easier to get a star to come out of Atlanta or off of a film set that's filming here locally than it is to fly someone in from wherever they are. So that makes it a little bit easier. Yeah.
Well, you know, along the same subject, you know, a film festival that I've been to many times and know some of the people, and I never hear a word about it out here, and that's the Atlanta Film Festival. Never hear anything about it.
Yeah, and then
maybe I don't read the right trades or talk to the right people, but I don't. I never hear of any filmmakers out there saying, "Hey, I've entered my film in the Atlanta Film Festival," or "I made the Atlanta Film Festival." I don't know what's going on. If maybe they're just self-satisfied with just serving Atlanta, and I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, it's always been a bit of an anomaly to figure that out. I know they get a ton of submissions, so people are submitting to their festival.
Right.
But marketing it is the hardest thing. That's what I've found to be the hardest thing with RIF is just to get the word out. When a lot of times your program sometimes, especially with your celebrity guest, comes last minute, but it's really not about the celebrities. It's about the films. But just to promote it and get the word out, people know know the culture of it, and they come no matter who's, you know, on the lineup. But just trying to market the festival is a challenge, and we do. I'll say half of our attendance is out of towners when we have the festival.
Right, I remember that. I think the same demographic for when I was, you know, there. All these people were coming from Macon and Atlanta, and you know, real film buffs and everything, and absolutely. And that was a frustrating thing, you know, for Romans. I mean, I always used to. My cliche was, I wish the folks down on Horse Lake Creek would just get out of their recliner and come to an independent movie. It might change their life, you know. But you know, it's people are set in their ways, and you know, if it's at the DeSoto, could it be any good? Well, the answer is yes. It could be great.
You know, to circle this back to what y'all were talking about before about Harry. You had mentioned about this is something that you were involved with your spouse, and of course, Seth and April play an instrumental role with the organization as it is now. That is definitely something that I've heard from outsiders and folks even within the community that separates us from some of the other film festivals, giving it that personal touch. Yeah, that I hate using the term hometown touch, but more of a touch where people feel like they can engage with people more personally. They can network on a cozier level, if you want to. That's kind of a trite term to use, but which might set it apart from some of the larger festivals that people have heard about, or some of the more brand names where there is a different vibe. So definitely, to your credit, to Seth's credit, and all the significant others of the folks who have been involved with RIF, that's something we've prided ourselves over the last nearly 20 years.
And rightly so. Absolutely. Hurrah, huzzah, and rightly so. And, this is just me being a little emotional. And I know Seth feels the same way because we've had this conversation. There's just nothing like during RIF, walking down toward Schroeder's and seeing all these people with their lanyards and their RIF tags. That just, strangers that you've never seen before. And they're in Rome and they're attending your event that you worked so hard and they're in your town and the shopkeepers, the restaurateurs, John Schroeder, when he would be in that restaurant greeting every filmmaker. Oh, you're here for RIF. Oh, that's wonderful. He was down there just really, really helping the cause. And there are other unsung heroes down there on Broad Street that are doing that and off Broad Street. But yeah, we
recently had last year we had someone attend the festival with the Consulate General of Israel, and he was from L.A. Originally, I believe, right?
New York.
He's from New York, but he was admiring how that the town is part of the fabric of the festival. It's not like you're just going into a Cineplex and it lives and dies there, but the entire town is the backdrop of the festival, and you participate with the town in the festival, and that is what you get out of a town that's outside of a metro area that is a destination. And it's sort of like when the first time I did the festival, I didn't know what it was going to be like, and it felt like going to summer camp with a bunch of you don't know these people, and you're with them for 3 or 4 days, and then they become some of your best friends, and then it's all over, and you're like, you're missing everyone as soon as they're gone.
Exactly.
And I'll never forget that first experience, but it's different every year. When you have a celebrity that puts on a certain amount of expectations, and when you have to spend time with a certain amount of people, you don't get to spend your time with all the filmmakers, which is what I really love to do, is meet all the filmmakers and make all the connections. And as I go around, we were at a festival this weekend in Texas and making connections there. So it's like when you go as a filmmaker, you get to experience it from the other side, and you have a respect for what the festival does, and you see how they treat their filmmakers and all of their guests and their patrons and sponsors. And so you've got to do a great job of welcoming everyone and making everyone feel like they're a part of it. And that, if you can do that, your reputation will grow, and people will want to come to your festival.
Well, y'all have both touched on it a little bit. The economic impact, hotels and restaurants. I mean, it benefits the entire town when RIF goes on.
Yeah, and I do. I bill us as a economic development engine, because now that we have quite a few film productions here all the time, and half of them are the ones that I have a connection to or have brought here. But I'm constantly out there wherever I go, promoting Rome as a film location as well. But we do have the event itself does produce, we have up to 5,000 attendees a year over the course of the festival. And that does bring in a lot of heads in beds, and restaurants get a lot of business. That's great. And
it's one of the things that I impress upon our board. We're brand ambassadors as opposed to board members, because yes, the event happens over the course of 3 or 4 days, but it's really the culmination of everything else that's happened over the course of the year. Seth's efforts bringing productions to town, the events that we hold. We want to make this more of a year-round integrated experience, and being brand ambassadors is one of those things that helps raise awareness to what this community can offer for the film industry and people who are film buffs, and the economic impact, getting to your point, Roger, that results out of it.
Have you one nut that I never cracked as executive director, and I think Seth, you've done a little bit better than me, maybe a lot better than me, is that we would put on the festival, and we would send press releases to a paper I happen to write for. I don't know if you guys have ever read my columns, but the Rome News Tribune, and like clockwork, they would put out the nicest article on the Sunday after the festival was over. And I would go, guys, you're not helping us here. I mean, who cares about what, it's past history. Give us the article, give us 2-3 articles during that week. Help us, do that. And I would just be greeted with blank stares,
Yeah.
I don't know
that game
how
has
your
changed.
relationship.
Oh, they are great. They're very supportive over there, Severo and his team. They're
good.
It's definitely changed.
Yeah, we get but the problem on our end is getting them all the stuff they need in time. It's just putting on a big event like this. It takes an army, and then sometimes that army is you and your wife, and a few board members. You got to be scrappy, but it's hard to get those press releases out. We're changing. I mean, we're elevating it. We're growing. I think this festival is definitely growing in all respects, including how we're marketing and all the Variety is covering Riff this year, and New York Times is covering Riff this year.
And we have a podcast. And we have a podcast now.
Yeah,
and a podcast. And let me a shameless self promotion. I'd like for your if any of your listeners are interested in show business in New Mexico and so forth and so on. My partner and I, my writing and producing partner, Donald J. Davenport is his name. We have a podcast called The Dung Ball Express, and we covered the business of show throughout. We have guests from all over the country, and so it would be a great brother sister podcast to go with the Riff podcast, The Dung Ball Express.
Dennis said the dung ball is in like the dung beetle.
As in the dung beetle, because that's what show business is like, if you follow me.
And you have a lot of them out there, because I lived out in Arizona for a while. I've seen my fair share of dung beetles.
well,
The human and the insect variety.
we'll definitely share that and tune into that area. Yeah, we're gonna be wrapping up here, but I just wanted before we go, next year, not this year, our festival this year is November 10th through the 13th. We're very excited about that. We'll be announcing all of our programming in the coming weeks. But the next year, Harry, is year number 20, and we're going to celebrate our 20th anniversary, and we want to invite all of the former executive directors and board members to come back and participate in that festival. So hopefully year number 20, you can be with us.
I would love to do that.
Go ahead and put it on your calendar if you can.
Absolutely, guys, to keep me on that hot line there, because I would love to come back and rub elbows with you great folks and tell tall tales. That'd be terrific.
Well, we're so grateful to have had you as a guest, Harry. Hopefully we'll have you back at some point, maybe in person at some point. So
great to talk to somebody from the Berry family again.
Well, absolutely. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to be with you guys. It wasn't even a difficulty. It flowed like water. It was great.
And give my regards to your lovely bride. And my bride sympathizes with all the work we make them do. She can't do it without her.
And tell Michael Dunaway to get a permanent job at some point. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. This has been fantastic. You've been listening to the Rome International Film Festival podcast. We broadcast from the Hardy Realty Studios on Broad Street in downtown Rome. We work in cooperation with the Rome News Tribune, and this podcast is sponsored by Manco Logistics, a local business that is invested in the success of the Rome International Film Festival. We thank you so much for listening.